Hello everyone, my name is Abbas and today I would like to take you on a short reflective journey through how I created my final culminating assignment on L.A. Wiesel's Night. This project was a deep dive into night through three critical lenses like feminist lens, powerless lens, and race lens, all connected by the idea of decolonizing literature. So instead of analyzing Wiesel's story in isolation, I connected to other stories, images, and voices to highlight perspective you often overlook. In this podcast, I want to share how I completed this assignment, the choices I made, the challenges I faced, and what I learned overall. When I first brainstormed this assignment, I already knew I didn't want a basic book analysis. In class, we discussed decolonizing literature, which means like bringing forward marginalized voices that history and mainstream narratives often ignore. That really resonated with me, and even though Night is powerful on its own, I realized it can become more meaningful when studied beside other voices and contexts. So I decided to examine Night through three lenses such as feminist lens to explore gender and women experience during the Holocaust, powerless lens to focus on oppression and resilience, and race lens to examine the racial ideology behind the Holocaust. My goal was to show how these lenses deepen our understanding of night and honor the voices that are often left out. Basically, like helping decolonize how we read literature. So, with my plan in place, I moved into research and development. I outlined my presentation with an introduction and thesis, one section per lens. After this, I wrote the thesis, which was a key because I needed one idea to hold the whole thing together. And by using the thesis outline given to us, I came up with something like, through an examination of feminist, powerless, and race lens in L.A. Wiesel's Night, the reader gains heightened understanding of why it's important to decolonize literature. That thesis gave me a direction because every piece of the evidence had to connect back to uplifting oppressed voices. Next, one of the most enjoyable parts of the process was making connections to other work and media. I don't want to talk about the other lenses in purely abstract way. Instead, I wanted real examples that would hit emotionally. For example, the powerless lens, I connected Night to I Am Not a Number by Jenny K. Dupis, which tells the story of Irene, an indigenous woman taken from her family into a Canadian residential school. The parallels were honestly striking. Both Irene and Eleazar lose their names and become numbers, like Irene being 759 and LA becomes A7713. Both faced systems that tried to erase identity and humanity, and both survive by holding on to hope and family. Irene dreamed of home and refused to forget who she is, and Eleazar survives through his father's and his faith until that faith is tested. I love how this comparison because it linked two different historical offenses and showed a shared theme: people in power trying to crush the powerless, yet even in that people resist and keep their dignity. And reinforced by diverse voices matter in literature. Another part I enjoyed was adding visual and modern parallels. In the race lens section, I included a photo of a Nazi-era storefront sign which said, "German business, Jews unwelcome." Seeing this image made anti-Semitism feel concrete. It turned the hatred in Night into something public and visible, not just something in the background. I explained how propaganda and racist policies normalized discrimination and paved the way for genocide. The visual gave the race lens real emotional weight and historical authenticity. Now, not everything was easy. The hardest part for me was the feminist lens. Since Night focused on Ellie and his father. Women's voices were like his mother and sister were barely present. I struggled with how to apply a feminist perspective, like the text doesn't give much direct access to women's experience. So I researched women during the Holocaust and learned how many women, especially mothers with children, were often exterminated immediately because they were seen unable to work, showing how operation was also gendered. To add a stronger female voice, I brought up Malala's Yousafzai story using Malala's magic pencil. Even though the Holocaust and Taliban era Pakistan seems very different, both male dominant systems silencing women. I used the quote from Malala: I spoke for all the girls in my valley who couldn't speak for themselves, in contrast with the silence forced onto women in Night. I was nervous connecting Night to Malala might not flow, but I think it worked out because it reinforced the idea that women's voice matter across time. This section took the longest and needed revisions, but it taught me how to adapt and think self-reflectively, like asking myself what I was really trying to achieve and how else I could achieve it. Another challenge was organizing everything, so I had many quotes, text, images, and facts that I drafted, feeling overloaded. I even gathered extra samples at first, like survivor statistics and other novels, but I realized I didn't have unlimited time or space, so I had to cut things and keep only the strongest evidence, which were directly tied to the thesis. That taught me sometimes less is more when your goal is clarity. In terms of success, I'm proud of how I balanced a deep analysis with creativity. Each lens had a strong foundation in Night and direct quotes and interpretation, but also had something extra to broaden perspective, like Irene's story, the Nazi signed photo, and the modern feminist parallel, like we are not just things. Processed from Me Too. Not None of these examples were random. They were all supported my thesis and helped me tell a bigger story about my repression, survival, and missing voices. Looking back, I'm really satisfied how my project turned out, and if I were to self-evaluate, I would rate it a high good to a outstanding range. I couldn't call it perfect because there's always room for improvement. Like for me, blending in the feminist lens slightly smoother would have been better, but overall I met my goals and the assignment was focused, original, and reflected my voice rather than repeating class notes. This project also taught me a lot about my own process. I love research, so I went really deep and spent more hours gathering material that I actually needed. That meant I had to rush a bit during the later stages like finalizing and practicing. In future, I want to set clear limits and mini deadlines like finishing one lens by a certain day so every section has gets balanced attention and I'm not scrambled at the end. I also learned that I enjoy reflecting and presenting more than I expected. At first, doing a podcast about my own work was a little weird, but talking through it helped me understand what I did and why I did it. It made me more aware of my strengths and connecting my ideas to analyzing evidence and also my weaknesses like over planning and doubting a tricky situation. That kind of self-reflectivity is valuable and I want to keep doing it. Looking forward, I want to keep using multiple perspectives when studying anything. This project trained me to always ask myself whose voice is missing and what lens helped me understand text more deeply. Personally, I also want to improve my oral communication and writing is like good for me, but presenting in recorded formats is still something I want to grow into. Doing this podcast is helpful, but I want to keep practicing presentation and short vlogs. To close it off, creating a culminating assignment on night was challenging but incredibly rewarding. I pulled together history and literature, worked through real obstacles like missing women's voices, and found creative solutions. So I learned a lot about my own habits, and most importantly, I walked away with a deeper appreciation of voices that often go unheard. And I truly believe including these voices make our understanding of any narrative richer. To end it off, thank you so much for listening, and I hope you found the self assessment interesting and